Oh, hey, happy day, night. Happy full moon. Happy full moon, and I don't know, I feel like it keeps mixing up. There's been occurrences of it being one thing or another throughout the year. Time is a funny, fickle thing. And multiple sources still give me multiple conclusions, but I'm also very familiar with the sort of wavering cuspness of that exists between Scorpio and Sagittarius. Because is it a moon in Scorpio? By some accounts. Is it a moon in Sagittarius? By some accounts, but very, 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 very barely, like a degree or two. So I think that plays a big part into it as well. I think there's also a lot of energy pulling toward like the times, first house, second house kind of deal, which I think lends a lot of its energy to pressure and undoing and overthinking, and also very much stepping into new times, new identity, new roles, new boundaries, and exploring that. And I've also noticed that just kind of coming into this is how much people are exploring and pushing their own boundaries, how much we all are, and what that means, or new emotional boundaries even, and what exploring that can feel like or look like, or what escaping that can look like or feel like. There's a seeking of and an escaping that is also very much that pull between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So it makes sense. It makes sense. Venus is now in Cancer. Mars is now in Leo. At least now, since the last one I did. That last new moon, was a doozy. But we're present, full moon. I think Venus in Cancer is a very devoted place to be. I think Mars in Leo is a very interesting place to be. Pay attention to temperament. It can be a very egoic place to be. It can be a very confident place to be. But humbleness can turn into insecurity, just like confidence can turn into an uncontrolled ego, and one that is still fragile and still, if not more so, very fragile and faulty. Pluto's in retrograde. In, again, strange minimal degrees and lines of and cusps of. So I've read 0 degrees in Aquarius, and I've read that it is absolutely retrograde in Capricorn again. The blurring of lines, and again, time is such a fickle thing. Perception really does change it all, and this is, if anything, an interesting battle of perceptions, and ultimately anything moving forward will be the unification of, or the creation of. And I noticed that too. There's interesting just kind of poles intersecting, penetrating, if you will, which leads me back to a full moon in Scorpio, maybe. I think a lot of this energy is also leading with a lot of fire. With, Mars and Leo and many other planets in fiery and full potentials, or risings. And I think that makes for a very chaotic full moon. And I think that exists regardless of, but especially because this cusping that I'm noticing between Scorpio and Sagittarius designating themselves for this full moon. With that being said, all of that being said, the sun is in Gemini, and also makes me lean toward the Scorpio side. And we are in a good place of observing and synthesizing because of that. We just have to lean into that rather than desperately seek or hurriedly escape. The Mars and Venus combination definitely gives me like hopelessly devoted vibes. But if it was like a metal cover, does that make sense? Oh, we started with time. Interesting. I've been reading for myself a lot, so I'm shuffling extra good for you. You know, we all need guidance. A catalyst experience. Lucky us that we get so many. Right, full moon. I like that. Alrighty, much like many times before, if you have done this with me, and if you have not, party on. We're gonna do it anyway. So we can tap in together. Thank you for participating with me. We're gonna take 3 deep breaths together. I hope that this isn't the only time you've done it, but you know, I'm glad you're here doing it anyway. We'll take 3 deep breaths together, and I'm gonna try and tap into all of this weirdness that we're gonna see. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Oof, okay. We're going to see. Okay. Interesting. King of Wands, the King of Creation, also designates safe space. And when we were breathing, what I was also kind of getting is, and I was looking at the moon, and it was interesting already. There's levels of perception at play and perception of self, and there's levels of I guess sort of deconstructing and reconstructing versions or of the self, or versions of the kind of life that you want to live, of versions of healing to be had, like steps into the self, that is cleansing a very like mucusy yellow, which is a lack of confidence, and which is also like inflammation, very literally, and like the things that ail us, the things that create more density in our body, and like stop up our holes, prevent the light from getting in, that distort the senses. All of these things are things that need to be cleansed, need to be washed away, need to be reconciled with, need to be brought balance to, and that's the 6 of Pentacles. That is the first thing that comes to. But my point of bringing the King of Wands up is the bottom of the deck is him creating the safe space. It's utilizing the tools to make all of these steps and create light where there was sickness, I suppose. An illness of thought. Perhaps that also means that the chaos of this full moon is going to be more of a mental state, or chaos, or emotional, internal, because the 10 of Wands is also present. So there is an incredible amount of anxiety and doubt and pain that's locked away. Worries, you know, but time has moved very fast. The year's already over. There's Christmas shopping to be had. And there's a lot that, given all of this time, that is still coming up to play. We're still juggling a lot of the same things. But that does not mean that balance cannot be had. Again, this King of Wands has a very sturdy and safe space to offer. We have a very sturdy and safe space to offer. Don't take your imagination for granted. Don't take your patience or your imagination or your kindness for granted. Lean into those things. Lean into those things for the sake of those things. And that ultimately is kind of the quell to the vicious combo that is the hopeless temperamental devotion of Venus and Mars in a very passionate sign. One way or another, we're either leading with fire if it's in Sagittarius, or we're leading with fire in a very intense water, which is all that much more. Because, you know, Scorpios and Sagittarians are very intense. Very intense. The Magician is also here. And that is very much a reminder of capability, a reminder of resources, a reminder of the structure that can be created from daring to imagine and daring to challenge the self and question, daring to be inspired, daring to be passionate. That is very much the Wands energy that this King of Wands is filling the deck ultimately with, or filling this moment with, filling this, the waves and the tides of this moon with. That's the energy behind it. Let's see. I feel like it's very, like, subconsciously mental. There's a lot of literal, but it does all tie to this, like, root thought, or this, like, root state of being in the Magician, and that's, I think, a big part of the key of it. This might be too general to say, but, like, the root of whatever the problem is can be traced back to something, like, almost like impossibly distant or small, and like of a mental perception, that, yes, ties into all of these, you know, like, magnifies in these literal ways, you know, like, you know, depression starts to manifest in all of these ways, or, you know, this one habit starts to manifest in all of these ways, or this one thing that happened when you were 5 starts to manifest in all of these, like, later relationships. It's very much that kind of thing. And that, knowing that isn't minimizing the problem, but it does put it within your grasp. And it does ultimately give you more holding and choice when you get to look at it that way. It gives you a little bit more control. And maybe that's exactly what one little thing to hold on to in the chaos of the full moon, to be able to start to balance all of these tangible pentacles in the ways that they do manifest, and be able to order them in the ways that we want to, because again, we're starting to work from the root of it in the imagination and the memory, before we act on it, and before we designate and start to literal and quantify, if that makes sense. In context of emotions, you know, rather than lean into the hopeless devotion again of Venus and Mars, explore and lean into understanding the origin and the memory of any given instance or trigger, before reacting to, and that you'll find will change the current of the reaction that you desire out of it, or because of it. And that ultimately is the transformation of the Magician, and is reminding you again to go back to that root moment and create safety in that space, so that it magnifies with this King of Wands, because that is ultimately a very strong space, but a very open space, and again, feels heart and ideas and all of these things to come. It doesn't have to be a heavy chaos. It can be a creative and inspiring chaos. Ultimately, maybe that's why Pluto's going retrograde too, is we're trying to solidify a different experience on moving forward. And that's also part of the discomfort. I think a big part of what you can also offer to yourself is the ability to flow. We all have very intense emotions, and we can connect to the earth and the elements in that way, and speak to nature in that way. But when you learn to flow, you learn to speak to elements as well. When you learn to move with ease, when you learn to almost like not absorb, but it's like the elegant way of like, I am rubber and you are glue. If you can still hold and recognize, but send that back without judgment, is that more cleansing than to add on and compile judgment and flow that kind of energy around. Again, that's where the intangible becomes tangible, and why we're starting with the Six of Pentacles, but understanding it in the transformation in the Magician. Yes. Okay. That was supposed to happen that way. Okay. My body feels very funny. Alright. Again, 3 deep breaths to both cleanse the body and make our souls very receptive to all there is to learn in this wonderful moon. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Take a deep breath in. And exhale. Interesting. I really feel like the process of that is almost like confidence feels so imaginary when you don't have it, and then all of a sudden it becomes so tangible. Self-touch doesn't become so fearful, and you become so tangible in your own world because of that, like to yourself, to your own reality, to your own, like you become more girthy, more filling. No better words to describe it. And there's very much the opportunity for that kind of transformation as well. But it does start from a very imaginative void of a place. And there, again, is a lot of fire energy up front. And I think these incredible ebbs and flows of emotional tides in the moon will make that challenging, but will ultimately make that conducive moment, like more conducive moments for you to branch out in yourself and become stronger and sturdier as a stalk. And like there's a lot of core development that I'm feeling, and a lot of emanation from that as well. So I don't know, take that for what you want. I don't know if you're feeling the same things I am. Okay. This screams boundaries to me. Two of clubs, the bottom of the deck. A diversion, a delta, a compounding, compacting. There's a boundary there. It's almost like you know, neighborhoods can be across the street and suddenly everything's different. Laws are different. People are different. Zip codes are different. It's less about choices and more about that crossroads specifically, which I mean ultimately is a choice. But it's less about the choice of two and more about the choice of defining boundaries, because we also have or defining space, or defining definition, defining direction. There's King of Hearts, Nine of Spades, Seven of Hearts. It's cute and mischievous. There's definitely a fun vibe to it. The idea of cutting off or letting go like has a lot of like heavy weight to it. There's definitely like something more fun about this, and it's maybe the power that comes behind recognizing your emotions and recognizing how powerful they can be, and recognizing how powerful you can be because of that, and how powerful your needs can be, how powerful your like meeting your demands for yourself can be, how liberating it is to be in that space of mind, and very much the opposite of a place of lack or not good enough as Mars was in a point of time. I want to say the Nine of Swords has been described as a bad luck card before to me, or like in something that I read. But at the same time, it's inverted, and it's very much about your willingness to take in that which is not nourishing, your willingness to like allow bad luck, I suppose, you know, your willingness to kind of push those things aside when they don't taste good, and they don't activate your chakras, and they don't bring you wholeness or something that you can grow with. Ultimately, like there is sort of an open-endedness to the energy that Nine can be, wants to be whole, but so what's that missing piece? It's very much mental. How are you holding yourself back? And it being inverted is very much like refusing to, rejecting anything that does not serve or uphold or honor or reciprocate, or, you know, offer you the same kind of fucking patience that you want, offer you the same kind of like lust for life that you value. Seven of Hearts in the past has also been like whether or not you're willing to communicate if you're okay. And I feel like that's also something very liberating and very bold and very fulfilling to do, is like be honest with when you need help, be honest with when you're not okay, and rather than escape those emotions or avoid them, establish a new emotional maturity, which lengthens your boundaries effectively, and rather than constricts or compacts all of these things, and creates more density, allows for more airflow, allows for ignition, allows for light, therefore to pass through, in the same way that we fan a fire. And it does not have to be a destructive fire. It can be inspiration and creativity and desire and all of these things that get bogged down in the system, really. And the King of Hearts, I think, also lends to that. It's very much a new page, a new state, a new statement, a large statement, a bold statement, and a necessary or needed one, and one I think adds to, again, this idea of needs and the liberation of being outspoken about those things. The King of Hearts is one to profess their love, kind of deal. So profess your love to yourself, profess your love to your job or your distaste or what have you. Express your love to your friends, express your love to your planets. We're in this room because I did not want to wake them. And express where you do need space. And ultimately that will start to establish both a safe space here and resonate and radiate because of that. Where you won't find yourself pushing so hard, or struggling to breathe in the way that the Ten of Swords may often have us. In you rushing to catch our breath in a place where the Six of Pentacles is inverted. Let's go on all of that upright. Let me pull one little. Yes, journey of confidence, the journey of working on the core. Core, solar plexus, confidence, nourishment, gut health, digestion, all of these things. Again, remember, your body doesn't necessarily know the difference between digesting food or digesting emotions. If you're going through a lot, be very mindful about how you're processing that. High Priestess and the Ace of Swords, or our last little lucky pull, which is funny. Again, we have a 2. We're reiterating that. Again, boundaries. Both of those bottoms of the decks would be the 4s. Again, we have the King of Wands in his safe space. Is he guarded by this messenger and this High Priestess? Sounds like a party to me. And one of great conductivity with this Ace of Swords here. Trust what you know is very much part of this card, but it's also coming from, again, an emotional place, and a place of memory, because we're dealing with thought, right? We're dealing with air. But when you deal with the air, there's also like hydrogen particles in it, so you're still kind of dealing with water. You are still dealing with memory because of that. Trust what you know, trust what you feel, explore those things. Don't distrust your body. All of those emotions, or even like panic attacks I've had, I trust that my body is doing its best to protect me. It's just using emotion to protect me from emotional stimuli. And when you look at it that way, it's less, I guess it feels less like your body's like failing you or attacking you or shutting down on you. Because that all of those words definitely create some density and some heaviness and some helplessness to the experience. And perhaps I am too hopeful, but my body has been through all of this. And the High Priestess is somebody who doesn't shy away from those things. Because they lean into it, they ultimately create stability in that. Because when you face those fears, you kind of walk into the void. It's not like they're unarmed, you know, like very literally, like it's this magical character and this fantastic sword. And if they're fucking partying with King of Wands, like this exists within you. You know, whether it's multiple sides of you that you view it as, or, you know, multiple ancestors that you feel have your back, or, you know, multiple spirits or deities or whatever it is, or, you know, one deity, whatever floats your boat. Use those as ways to explore your memory and your emotion so that you can better understand them and further understand why your body is communicating the way that it is in moments of chaos, rather than lashing out or leaning into the fire or getting burnt by it. Yeah, I will leave it at that. Rather than inflame, let's shed some light on some things and calm the storm. And, you know, develop some new emotional maturity. But until then, until next time, party on. Happy full moon. Be safe and be kind and don't be a dick. It's really not that hard. But you know, I love you. I know none of you guys are, but I'm sure you're gonna have to deal with some. So you know what? Laugh it off, and I hope you think of me saying don't be a dick when you do. But until then, I'm going to wash off my work night and, you know, go about my way. Au revoir.